Yesterday, President Biden announced his plan to give amnesty to more than 500,000 illegal aliens. This program is manifestly unconstitutional. Even Joe Biden's old boss, Barack Obama, admitted repeatedly for his entire presidency that it was unconstitutional until 2014, when Obama did it anyway.
I taught the Constitution for 10 years. I know some here wish that I could just bypass Congress, change the law myself. But that's not how democracy works. And sometimes when I talk to immigration advocates, they wish I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself. But that's not how democracy works. That's not how our democracy functions. That's not how our Constitution is written.
This notion that somehow I can just change the laws unilaterally is just not true.
What you're not paying attention to is the fact that I just took an action to change the law.
Wait, what? Hold on. Years and years. I can't do this. It's unconstitutional. I taught constitutional law. I can't change the law by myself. I can't change the law by myself. I changed the law by myself. And he did it. And it was so brazen because he had previously admitted that he couldn't do it, but he did it anyway because why not? Who's going to stop him? And now Joe Biden is doing that same thing again. The way he is working around the law this time is by granting these illegal aliens parole in place. It's a workaround to immigration law that goes even further to give the illegal aliens work permits, Social Security cards, and eligibility for welfare programs. And that's just while they're waiting for their green cards and eventually for their full citizenship. Joe Biden is calling this policy the Keeping American Families Together order. In fact, the policy would be better named the "Oh crap, I'm down 20 points among Hispanics" order. Biden is not even being subtle about this. The policy specifically benefits illegal aliens who are married to legal U.S. citizens. That is to say, it benefits the spouses of people who can already vote, who are, by the way, overwhelmingly likely to be Hispanic, the group that Biden is losing in droves. This is a naked ploy to buy votes by subverting the law. And unfortunately, thanks to our current political economy, it might work. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. A man who pretends to be a woman and who infamously flashed his artificial breasts at the White House is now being accused of sexual assault by women who think that they're men. We'll get to that. First, though, you must go to thecandleclub.com right now. Thecandleclub.com. You got to put the in there. And that way you can get my whole collection of candles. I've got a lot of candles here. This one that I'm holding in front of me, it smells delicious. It's called Sicilian Summer. It is a delightful little citrusy treat. It'll put you right on the shores of Palermo or Taormina or something. Really good stuff. But you can also get all the other candles you like. The PSL candle, which was a huge bestseller, you can get that there. You can get a new version of the Smells and Bells candle, which sold like hotcakes during Lent. That is now called Wise Man. It's a very close approximation of that great candle. We've got Old Soul. We've got the Chem de la Chem candle. We've got an entire array of Mayflower candles in beautiful glass jars, colored glass. They're just great. Go to thecandleclub.com right now to see our selection of candles. Everyone hates mass migration. Everyone hates it. I don't mean literally everyone, but I mean the vast majority of Americans, Republicans, independents, Democrats, even, they hate mass migration. But the powers that be continue to push mass migration. How do they get away with it? The way they get away with it is in large part because mass migration is the only thing that keeps our economy afloat, because Americans don't have kids. And we haven't been having kids at replacement levels for over 50 years now. So that's the way they can push it through. They say, look, we need to do it just to keep the economy afloat. That's why business gets behind it. That's why established powers are able to push this, even though the American people don't want it. So on that front, I've got a little bit of good news. Some of you might have seen this on X yesterday, but I am doing my part to restore the American birth rate because we welcomed our third child, another boy, yesterday. Very exciting. Still did the show yesterday, did the show today. DailyWire's paternity leave for the hosts it's a little lackluster. Though the secret is, yes, paternity leave seems kind of modern. It seems a little lib. We make fun of it for that reason. But the real secret as to why conservatives don't like paternity leave that much is because the real paternity leave for men is going to work. Because especially in those days, right after a new child is born, staying at home and helping mama and dealing with maybe with the other kids and juggling all that stuff, that is much, much more work than actually just going to work and doing your job. So that's a little bit of the secret there. I appreciate everyone for sending in congratulations, of course, but also prayers as we've led up to this moment. Very, very exciting. Baby and mama both doing very, very well. Now, speaking of childhood, we turn from first childhood to second childhood. Joe Biden, in his senility, has frozen up again. You might recall a day or two ago, I played a clip on this show of Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, denying that Biden is freezing up and doddering around and losing his train of thought and walking into walls and looking like he saw a ghost. And the way Karine Jean-Pierre denied this was she said the videos going around are cheap fakes, not deep fakes, because that actually refers to a specific type of technology which is not being used here. The videos going around are just unvarnished videos of Biden looking like a senile old man. So no sooner do the words get out of Karine Jean-Pierre's mouth than Joe Biden falls into another one of these little stumbles.
Members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary, I'm not sure you're going to introduce you all the way. But all kidding aside, Secretary. And the Secretary, and just kidding anyway. And you can look at their faces there. These are all really sharp politicians behind him. You see Alejandro Mayorkas, the DHS secretary. You see Chuck Schumer. They're all trying to keep their composure as Biden is just totally losing his train of thought and freezing up in public. But if you look closely on Chuck Schumer's face, even Schumer, a very practiced politician, you can see the alarm bells going off in his eyes. Oh no, here we go again. How are we going to spin this? You didn't really see that. These are cheap fakes. This isn't real. Don't believe your lying eyes. Is that a cheap fake, Karine Jean-Pierre? I don't think so. I think this was video. It was broadcast live to a lot of people, and they all saw it, and we all know it, and that's in part why Biden's poll numbers are so bad, and that is especially why the majority of Democrats right now don't want him to be the nominee in 2024, but too bad for them. It's too late, so they can't replace him, and that means that all they're left to do is just deny and gaslight people and tell them they didn't see what they saw. They got nothing. And they are lying. The funniest version of them lying comes by way of I suppose you'd call him a middle tier liberal commentator. He's this guy, Brian Tyler Cohen. I've chatted with this guy before. He and I had at least one debate, maybe a couple of debates on Alex Michelson's show in LA. So I've been aware of him for a while. He tweeted out yesterday a picture of Donald Trump shaking a little hand. And if you know the characters involved, you can look down, you see, oh, there's Kimberly Guilfoyle, and oh, that's Don Jr. And so he's just holding his son's hand, just shaking his hand a little bit as he's walking off a stage. And what Brian writes is, here is a photo of Trump having to hold someone's hand to guide him off stage. I'm sure this will get just as much coverage as the daily Biden old story gets. So you say, hold on, what do you mean hold someone's hand? That's his son, and it's a still photo of him just lightly touching his son's hand. So is it what Brian Tyler Cohen says it is? Is he grasping on to hold this man's hand so that he can walk off the stage? Well, fortunately, we have video. All the video that's causing all these problems for Democrats, we have video for Republicans too. We have now video of everything because everyone's recording everything all the time. So let's see. Trump's in Hialeah, Florida. He's walking off a stage. What do we see? Okay, he's walking, he's applauding, he's looking good, virile, waving to everybody. Then, for what, 2 seconds, he touches his son's hand. His son is there, just looking to shake his dad's hand. Trump's still waving to everyone else, and he looks down, oh, hey, there's my son. Touches his son's hand for 2 seconds, then walks off stage, sauntering like the king of showbiz that he is. This post from Brian Tyler Cohen was a complete lie. And there's a special irony there, because this guy, Brian Tyler Cohen's show is called No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, soon to be renamed Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I think that to say the man is lying is probably the most charitable take here. Because if Brian Tyler Cohen is not lying, he must be the dumbest person in America. And I don't think I'm not saying the guy's a Rhodes Scholar, but I don't think he's so dumb as to believe that picture represented Trump, holding on for dear life, trying to get off the stage. Surely this guy, Brian Tyler Cohen, would have looked at the video before making this post, or surely he would have done even 2 seconds research to see, no, that isn't it at all. He just totally misrepresented it. So I think in fullness of charity, I have to say the guy is lying. So why are they lying like this? Because that's the only thing that you can do if you're trying to defend Biden on the charge of senility. If you're trying to distract people away from the fact that this man probably couldn't make himself a fried egg in the morning, much less be the president of the United States with any vigor or competence. And this is really pitiful. I really hope I never become a political commentator like this, the kind of guy, the kind of hack who just has to lie. To lie on behalf of some politician? I hope I never become that guy. I am a partisan. I am involved in active politics. I'm not a totally disinterested observer, far from it. I'm a conservative. I'm a member of the Republican Party. I hope Donald Trump wins the election. I hope Joe Biden loses the election. Absolutely. But I would not lie to you in order to try to score some point for some politician. I would never do that. I would always give a little more grace to my side if I could in good conscience. I would always, point out the errors of the other side, if as long as they're honest errors. But there's so many things that you could try to attack Trump for. This is it? This is the best they've got? Yes. I guess that's the good news. This is the best they've got. If they had anything better, they wouldn't have to lie. They wouldn't have to prosecute him. They wouldn't have to try to change all the election rules. They wouldn't have to try to kick him off the ballot. They wouldn't try to put him in jail. But they're doing that, which is proof that they've got nothing else. Now, one thing I have, especially we were just talking about eggs in the morning, one thing I have to accompany my eggs very often is delicious steak from Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com, promo code Knowles. With Independence Day right around the corner, what better way to celebrate America's birthday than with 100% American meat? GoodRanchers.com is the number one place to get 100% American meat for this holiday. Celebrate the sweet taste of freedom with savory meats conveniently delivered right to your door, all born, raised, and made right here in the USA. Whether you are hosting a backyard barbecue, a poolside party, or a beach bonfire, Good Ranchers has you covered. You know what I had for dinner? This would have been 2 nights. Last night we were in the hospital, with my wife delivering our 3rd child. And it was either the night before that or the night before that, I had some delicious Good Ranchers burgers, which to my mind is actually the best thing there. All the meats are incredible there, but the burgers are the best I've ever had. And you can get all of it. You can get all of it. You should do it right now. It's going to be the best stuff you've had at the lowest price. I don't know how their finances work. Go to Good Ranchers right now. Subscribe to any Good Ranchers box. Get $100 off plus free smoked brats for a year. It's unreal. GoodRanchers.com, promo code Knowles. You get your meat, your chicken, your pork, wild-caught seafood even, all of it. GoodRanchers.com, promo code Knowles. The big question around Trump right now. Well, I guess the one question is, are they going to throw him in prison? Another question is he even going to be able to show up to the convention if the libs put him in prison? But the big question, if you take all their shenanigans out of it, is who is Trump going to pick for his running mate? The Veep stakes are on. We've covered some of the possible names out there. People are talking about J.D. Vance. Some people are still talking about Nikki Haley. People are talking about Tulsi Gabbard. She's kind of a real dark horse candidate. Some have suggested Tim Scott, Ben Carson. Boy, wouldn't that be great? Some other names, Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum. Doug Burgum, you probably don't remember him. He ran for president this cycle. He was the North Dakota governor, a social liberal, but just kind of a business conservative, nice, amiable fellow, but didn't make a lot of waves. So the Rupert Murdoch empire, at least as expressed in the New York Post, has come out with their favorites. They want Burgum, and if not Burgum, they want Rubio. I joked about the Burgum candidacy. I said, we got Burgum-mentum, baby. I joked about it in the same way I joked about Chris Christie. I said, here's the croissants for short. That's it. He's going to rally all the conservatives. Let's go, baby, Chris Christie. Or here we go. We've got Burgum-mentum. Are you feeling the Berg? But nobody was, which is why he dropped out. Doug Burgum had to bribe people to contribute to his campaign. I actually have a family member who did this. Burgum said, in order to get on the debate stage, I need to get X number of small dollar donors. So if you donate even $1 to my campaign right now, I will send you a gift card for $20. A pretty good investment. I should have invested in the Burgum campaign. I could have made 20 times my money in Applebee's gift cards or whatever he was giving out. So of course, the more establishment New York kind of conservative media are coming out for Burgum. What's their argument? Their argument is that Burgum, he's a doer when it comes to business deals. He knows his way around the tech world. He worked for Microsoft. He's run several successful companies. And, he kind of has more of a hands-off approach to some of the social issues, to put it diplomatically. But he'd be great on the economy, so let's pick Burgum. And I think the New York Post realizes Burgum, it's not that he couldn't be the VP pick, but he's a little bit of a long shot right now. So if not Burgum, how about Rubio? Why Rubio? Well, because he's experienced in politics. He's served for a long time. He's learned some lessons from his own 2016 run, which didn't go that well. And this is actually a good point. They say he breaks with stale GOP orthodoxy when it comes to the interests of working class voters. That's true. Rubio has repositioned himself as more of a working class hero, a little bit more populist or of a traditional conservative, to break away with some of the neoconservative or libertarian talking points that have typified the GOP for the last few decades. He's photogenic, and hey, by the way, he'll appeal to Hispanic voters. Okay, I'm not really persuaded by either of those arguments or either of those candidates for VP. But then the New York Post, the Murdoch empire, which includes the New York Post, it includes Fox News Channel, it includes other very powerful right-wing entities, they make a point to say no to J.D. Vance. Do not pick J.D. Vance. He sought to suspend U.S. aid to Ukraine. Oh, you could never do that. Even as Ukraine puts private American citizens and American journalists on hit lists, as you may recall occurred to yours truly last week when I was informed of that by the U.S. Congress. No, forget about it. That's okay. We still got to fund Ukraine. And he says his opposition to abortion goes well past Trump. So he's too pro-life. You can't pick a pro-lifer to be the VP for Trump. That would be very scary to the New York-style establishment conservatives. Okay, and he's a little young. Nah, can't. He's yet to complete even 2 years in the United States Senate. That's true. You know who else was only in the U.S. Senate for 2 years before he decided to have higher ambitions? That would be Barack Obama. He was a pretty successful political candidate, as I recall. No, it was fine for Obama. It was bad for Marco Rubio. Give me a break. Who should Trump pick? I think it was clear enough before, but it's especially clear after reading this editorial. J.D. Vance is the favorite of the base, the conservative base. There are always these new terms that crop up. Often they're old terms that are just making a comeback for conservatives. The new right, the populists, the nationalists, the thisists, the thatists, whatever ism we're talking about that describes the tuned in, hardcore conservative base. I think pretty clearly they want J.D. Vance of all the options that have been put on the table. The edgy choice, the really edgy, I said the dark horse of the dark horse choices, is Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat who's taken a far more, let's say, nationalist or isolationist stance on foreign policy when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to, she's just unorthodox. She's the really edgy choice. The moderate choice remains Nikki Haley, who, as I've said from the beginning, is a very, very talented politician. She played well with Trump. She played pretty well against Trump. But during that presidential campaign, she positioned herself as the more moderate establishment, business kind of Republican choice for president. Probably she's lost a little bit of her luster because of how tough that race got in the primary between her and Trump. Kristi Noem would have been another somewhat more moderate choice. And it can soften Trump's image, appeal maybe to these suburban women. These are the arguments you heard for these candidates. Kristi Noem may have shot her political career at the same time that she shot her dog in the back of the head, or at least when she admitted to shooting her dog. Again, I kind of defended Noem on the story, but politically, she probably doesn't really play anymore. So because those two choices in the moderate lane are probably off the table now, the New York Post is pushing for Burgum or Rubio. Okay, but why are we going to listen to the New York Post? I like the New York Post. It's one of my favorite papers of many years. I get a kick out of their headlines, their tabloid coverage. But the New York Post came out pretty strongly against Donald Trump for years at this point. On top of that, the New York Post, it always has that American flag in the corner of the paper. This is a paper that's founded by Alexander Hamilton. Well, when the Ukraine war took off, they put a Ukraine flag on the New York Post. Why is there a Ukraine flag on the New York Post, a paper founded by a founding father? They're fanatically in favor of Ukraine funding. Okay, and they don't like that J.D. Vance is opposed to that. So they're going to push Burgum or Rubio. I mean, I have nothing against those guys, really. But it seems a little tone deaf. Why would Trump listen to people who have been actively, fanatically working against him for years? The question for Trump is, what kind of VP does he want? Not just for 2024, but for 2028 and 2032. We'll get to that in a second. First, though, got to talk about Zero Debt USA. Go to zapmydebt.com. Does your debt keep you tossing and turning at night? The unfortunate reality is that our banking system is designed to trap you in debt. These insanely high-interest credit cards and loans make it nearly impossible to pay off your debt. Thankfully, there is a way out of the debt trap with Zero Debt USA. You've heard me talk about pivotal debt solutions. Well, now they're called Zero Debt USA. They have new aggressive strategies that can help end your debt faster than you thought possible. Zero Debt USA can cut or even eliminate interest. They will help find programs to write off your balances, and they can do this without bankruptcy and without a loan. Bottom line, they find every solution possible to end your debt permanently. Before you do anything, contact Zero Debt USA first at zapmydebt.com. Talk to them for free. Find out how fast they can help you get out of debt. That is zapmydebt.com, zapmydebt.com. Indebtedness is one of the worst aspects of our modern culture, and there are a lot of companies and political forces that are designed to trap you in debt. You don't need to stay trapped in debt. Go to zapmydebt.com. The Trump Veep stakes is getting some, I think, actually helpful analysis. Nonetheless, interesting and unexpected analysis from Kamala Harris's former communications director. That would be Ashley Etienne, who went on CNN to give her pick.
It says to me that to some degree that they think that she's somewhat of a threat. I mean, she's a former prosecutor. Mm-hmm. She's spent time in courts defending her clients and defending the interests of California. So to me, it says, that he might be slightly nervous. But I think there's one other thing we're not sort of taking into consideration, and that is I think J.D. Vance would pose the greatest threat to Kamala Harris in some respects. I mean, he's an incredible debater. I think he has this quality that makes him seem palpable to that 1% to 2% that actually might vote, or that, that's undecided, that will actually pay attention to the debates, because most people don't pay attention to the debates. And I think he's just got a quality about him where he's super smart and sharp and quick-witted. I just think that, I think it's going to be a challenge to see the two of them face to face. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I think he's going to be the greatest threat. Totally right. This is really astute analysis. And she couches it in a really smart way, which is she said, look, no one really cares about the VP debate. Now, 1% to 2% of voters maybe will be swayed by the VP debate. People don't vote for president based on the VP debate, really not even based on the VP. But for those voters for whom this matters, J.D. Vance would be the most formidable debate opponent to Kamala Harris. And when she says, don't underestimate Kamala Harris, I think she actually makes a good point too. I said that
way back in 2018, 2019. I said, Kamala Harris is an impressive candidate. Sure, she can barely speak. Sure, her cackle is like nails on a chalkboard. Sure this, sure that. Sure, she had a kind of interesting way of rising up through politics. We'll just leave it at that. However, she's made it. In fact, the fact that she does not appear to be a Rhodes Scholar, the fact that she isn't the most impressive when it comes to her recall of facts and events and policy wonkery. The fact that she's made it this far in politics, despite all that, shows you how impressive a politician she is. Don't underestimate her. And then sure enough, she gets picked for VP by Joe Biden, even after making her campaign about how Joe Biden's a racist. That was how she launched her campaign on that debate stage for the 2020 election. So she is somewhat formidable. And then you add on to that all the identity politics. She's a black woman, or she's at least dark-skinned. You know, she's got a more heterogeneous ethnic background, but she at least reads as a black woman, and so that gives her an identity advantage in this intersectional age in politics. Vance would destroy her on a debate stage because J.D. Vance is extremely intelligent. Not only is he a Yale Law graduate. The elite schools have gone pretty crazy, but especially when you're talking about the law school, they still pick people who generally have pretty high IQ, who are generally really politically ambitious. If you want to be a lawyer, often you go to Harvard Law School or Stanford Law School. If you want to be Secretary of State or President, you go to Yale Law School. There's future politicians there. And even among people in his class, he's shown himself to be extremely skilled and talented. He came out with that book, Hillbilly Elegy, at exactly the right time, at precisely that moment when the deplorables were voting for their great new candidate who emerged from the ruins of the Republican Party, Donald Trump. That book became a huge bestseller, then became a movie. Then he parlayed that into getting a seat in the U.S. Senate. This is a really, really impressive guy. So now it sounds like I'm just advocating for J.D. Vance to be the VP. That's not what I intend to do. I love J.D. Vance. He'd be a great VP. But I'm just trying to show you what the field looks like, because now Trump has a decision to make. What kind of VP does he want? Does he want a legacy type VP, or does he want a lackey type VP? That's the decision, legacy or lackey. If he wants a lackey, then the New York Post is right. The New York Post is pitching Doug Burgum as a lackey. Oh, he won't upstage Trump. He'll be pretty quiet. He agrees with Trump on a lot of stuff, especially on business. He'll just fade into the background and he'll be a loyal lackey. Okay, if Trump wants a lackey, and maybe Trump does want a lackey, then that's the kind of candidate he should go for. But if he wants a candidate who's going to be formidable in 2028, who maybe could win election and then win re-election in 2032, then he's going to want a younger candidate, won't he? And if he wants a candidate who is more ideologically aligned with him, probably he's going to want a J.D. Vance. Maybe Rubio. Rubio has moved around a little bit during his career in the U.S. Senate, and before that in the Florida House of Representatives. He's positioned himself as at least a couple different kinds of conservative, but Vance seems to be in that lane right now. We saw this in the primary. There are just lanes. You can run in the Trumpian lane, the populist type lane. You can run in the Chamber of Commerce type lane. You can run in the maverick, reach across the aisle kind of lane. There were set lanes. Vance is the legacy kind of candidate. If he wants to balance the ticket, Vance isn't that guy. Vance agrees with Trump on a lot of stuff, and he's also a white guy. Now, I actually don't think it's the worst thing in the world in this age where everyone is so sick of political correctness and tokenism and picking people because of the color of their skin or their sex or whatever. Picking a white guy is actually kind of a bold choice. It cuts against that current of PC and wokeness. But if you want to balance it, maybe you pick a woman. Maybe you pick someone who's black. Maybe you pick, okay. The question for Trump is, not just what does he want to see happen in 2024, what does he want to see for 2028? What does he want to see for 2032? Now, at least one Democrat strategist thinks none of this matters, and he's one of the most famous Democrat strategists of the last 30 years. That would be the Ragin' Cajun, James Carville, who says, doesn't matter who he picks because they're There are simply not enough MAGA voters for Trump to win the election.
There's no Republicans. It's a Trump cult. The Republican Party that I knew, all right, that people knew of, Rob Portman or Bob Corker or even Dick Cheney, that no longer exists. And Mike Johnson is literally part of a cult. The bad news is you're not going to change MAGA's mind. The good news is that there's not enough MAGA for Trump to win with. There are not enough of them to win a general election in this country. And they're not very growing. Mike Johnson is not even a Republican in any sense of the word. He's a MAGA theocrat. And that's about it. And they're not there. They know they don't have a party anymore. They have a personality cult.
They're not even Republican anymore. And when I was a boy, we had good Republicans like Abraham Lincoln. We had a lot of good Republicans like Chet Arthur, James Garfield. But we don't have those Republicans no more because they've been dead for 150 years. So now we got these Republicans like Mike Johnson. He's not a Republican. Donald Trump, he's not a Republican. I think they are Republicans because they're the leaders of the Republican Party. But they're not a Republican like the one that I like. First of all, to hear James Carville compliment Dick Cheney, it's so tedious because the Democrats do this all the time. Ask James Carville 20 years ago what he thinks about Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was the devil. Dick Cheney was Satan himself. Now, though, now that Dick Cheney is 1 billion years old, now that Dick Cheney has absolutely no influence in the Republican Party, now he's a good kind of Republican. Now, James Carville and the Democrats have a strange new respect. That's always the phrase they use. It's a strange new respect for Dick Cheney and George Bush. And then who are the other guys he lists? Rob Portman, Bob Corker. These were moderate, pretty liberal Republicans. I like those Republicans who are real liberal and let the Democrats do whatever they want. I'm sure you do. I'm sure those are your favorite. And we do it too. The conservatives during the Bush era would say, I like those Democrats like Joe Lieberman. Yeah, because Joe Lieberman agrees with our president. Of course you like him. I like those Democrats like Joe Manchin when he agrees with us. I like those Democrats. Yeah, sure, of course. You always like your opponent when your opponent betrays his side and comes and supports your side. Yeah, of course. But that doesn't then define the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. What happened to all them Republicans? These are theocrats. First of all, James Carville, he's got a fair bit of insight into electoral politics. At least he did in the 90s. He was a pretty astute analyst back then. Maybe he still is. He doesn't know the meaning of the word theocracy. We throw these words around. Fascism, democracy. We don't, and the way we talk about those words these days often have nothing to do with the real meanings. We say that when most people vote for a candidate the liberals don't like, that's a threat to democracy. No, democracy is what most people vote for. That's democracy. Fascism is an ideology that comes out of Italy in the early to mid 20th century, and it's expressed by real writers. You can go back and read their writing, Giovanni Gentile or Marinetti or Mussolini for that matter. And fascism is not when a dad in the Midwest doesn't want some hulking dude going into his daughter's changing room. That's not fascism, believe it or not. It has a meaning. The Democrats don't use that meaning anymore. Same goes for theocracy. Theocracy is rule by the clergy. Political rule by members of the clergy. Nobody is calling for that. Ironically, he's attacking evangelical Protestants as being theocrats. If there were a theocracy that is ruled by priests and prelates, bishops ruled by the Pope, the evangelical Protestants would be the first to decry that. They actually don't recognize the Pope and the bishops, and they're relatively anti-hierarchical. No, that's not what theocracy is. What James Carville means is if you have your political vision in any way informed by Christianity, then you're a theocrat. Well, that's not what the word means. And everybody has his political vision informed by some idea or ultimately by some religion, because politics involves practical morality, and practical morality comes from religion. So his problem here is not theocracy writ large. It's not even a religious view writ large. It's that the religion that animates these people is not liberalism. For a lot of those Republicans that he mentioned, all the Republicans he mentioned, they weren't particularly Christian. And on crucial issues, they actually agreed with liberal political philosophy. That's why he, at least now, grudgingly likes them.
This guy did Mike Johnson. He member of a cult.
I guess he is a member of a cult. He's a member of a religion called Christianity, and James Carville doesn't like that. Yeah, okay, sure. But the Republican Party now is more openly speaking in Christian terms. And we used to do that 20 years ago. We actually did that too. There was the religious right, there was the moral majority, and we're doing that again. We went through a little period where we stopped speaking in religious terms, and then we lost everything because our ideas didn't make any sense. They were no longer on solid ground. The liberals, say what you want about them, they have a pretty clear ideology. It's an ideology that comes out of liberalism, that takes a fair bit from Marxism, from socialism, and now I guess we would call it progressivism. And it's clear, they can write down what they believe in a 10 bullet point manifesto on the back of a napkin, and pretty much they all agree. And even though their views are unpopular, the solidity, the coherence, the relative coherence of those views gives it a certain kind of power. And now the conservatives are recognizing, hey, we haven't even conserved the women's bathroom. Maybe our ideas need to be more coherent, more solid. And what are we conserving? Well, we want to conserve virtue. We want to conserve the American way of life. And ultimately that means speaking in a Christian way. And the liberals can't stand it. Next Thursday night, June 27th, Donald Trump and Joe Biden will enter the rhetorical gladiator pit for a primetime presidential debate. Their mics will be muted occasionally, probably more than occasionally if CNN has its way with Trump. Our mics will not be muted as we bring you exclusive coverage and commentary during a special DailyWire Backstage. We're giving you an unfiltered live stream experience, free to watch on DailyWire Plus. Hear the facts and insights from me and, tangentially, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Andrew Klavan, and Jeremy Boring. Our nation teeters on the precipice, beset by soaring inflation and border crisis, deteriorating cities, and rising crime. The 2024 election will be pivotal. Join us next Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern for the most uncompromising, clear-eyed debate analysis you will find anywhere. No lies, unlike the liberals. There will be no lies. Hear the truth about what unfolds on the stage and what it means for the future of this country. My favorite comment yesterday is from Can I Have One Dab 724. That's an interesting name. It says, colored glass jars. Excuse me, Mike. The correct term is glass jars of color. You make a good point. If you want to buy the Mayflower candles, we shouldn't say, that is an antiquated and offensive term. We should not call them colored jars. They are jars of color, but they are beautiful colors and they are marvelous smelling candles. Speaking of attacks on Christianity, Hillary Clinton has just come out. For some reason, she keeps talking. She's still around. She won't go away. Like I don't know, radon in a home. It's very difficult to get rid of it. Like various pests that live in your walls. They just don't go away. Hillary won't go away. She's now attacking Sam Alito. You'll notice that the Democrats are increasing their attacks on the Supreme Court, specifically on probably the most conservative justice on the Supreme Court, Sam Alito, the man behind the Dobbs decision, because they are looking ahead at 2024. They are seeing potentially a contested presidential election. They know that the courts will be involved. The courts will certainly be involved in answering questions about the constitutionality, legality of prosecuting Donald Trump, one of the two major party nominees. They might be involved, as they were in Bush v. Gore, in deciding the election. So Democrats are getting out ahead of this and attempting to delegitimize the court, a strategy they've been building on for some years now. Hillary Clinton is joining the fray, and she mentions that she was in the U.S. Senate when Sam Alito, and even when Justice John Roberts were up for confirmation, and she gives her insight as to why she voted against both of them.
I was in the Senate when both John Roberts and Alito were nominated to the court by George W. Bush. Therefore, I had a chance, as you rightly say, to interview both of them. And I found John Roberts to be a kind of conservative, corporate-oriented lawyer who had a kind of preconceived notion of the way things and people should work. And I voted against him because I thought he was, not only a candidate of the far right, the Federalist Society and their agenda, but that his life experience was just too narrow
Put a pause
to
here.
really be.
Put a pause here before we get on to her invective against Sam Alito. Chief Justice John Roberts is a candidate of the far right. John Roberts, the man who gave us Obamacare, who twisted himself into a logical pretzel to explain why Obamacare, obviously unconstitutional, must be preserved. That he's a man of the far right. She just admitted in the same breath, oh, Roberts, he's kind of a business guy. You know, he's like a business Republican. He's not really that concerned with the social issues. He's just like a business guy he's a corporate-minded conservative, an institutional man, you might say. But anyway, he's a candidate of the far right. There's another phrase that you're seeing crop up everywhere. The far right, the far right, the far right. The far right now means anyone to even slightly the left of Hillary Clinton. That's everyone. They say it about me all the time. They say it about people at the Daily Wire, people at Fox News, people at The Blaze. These are mainstream conservative outlets. These are the biggest conservative outlets in the country. Everyone is now the far right. And if you were ever tempted to think that they were being honest here, just know they consider John Roberts, the meek and mild-mannered Episcopalian who gave us Obamacare, they consider that man to be on the far right as well. So she voted against him because he just had a preconceived notion about how things are. Who doesn't? Only a child, only a totally ignorant child, bereft even of the ability to speak, doesn't have a preconceived notions of how things are. And actually, because the natural law is inscribed on every human heart, even little children have some preconceived notion of how things really are. What does that mean? You think Elena Kagan doesn't have a preconceived notion of how things are? You think Sonia Sotomayor doesn't have a preconceived notion of how things are? You think Hillary Clinton doesn't have a preconceived? Of course they do. If you've ever thought about anything, that means you have conceived of things, you've conceptualized things, and then, assuming you don't, you're not put up for confirmation to the Supreme Court the very day that you start thinking about things, then you have certain preconceptions because you've thought about them before and you've come to certain conclusions. That's called thinking. That's called education. That's called growing up. And she attacks John Roberts for this because he came to the wrong conclusions in her mind. He doesn't, actually, I don't even know what he thinks about abortion or whatever, but he's not as liberal as she is. So that's too bad. His life experience is too narrow. Life experience is too narrow means white guy. He was a white guy. That's why she voted against him. You think Sonia Sotomayor's life experience isn't narrow? You think she has a broader life experience than John Roberts? I don't think so. I'm not denying that she has a different life experience than John Roberts. She does. But when they use that for a narrow life experience, all they're saying is, we don't like white guys. We don't want white guys to be in positions of power. That's what she's saying. That's the way the phrase is used in our DEI gobbledygook kind of culture. She goes on to attack the real object of her ire, Sam Alito.
Really be in that position. Alito struck me almost immediately upon sitting down to talk with him as a radical, as a fanatic about his views of culture and the role of religion in our society, and his religion, not maybe yours or mine, Marks, but his religion. And I found him scary, and I said so on the floor of the Senate when I voted against him. We got the judges that had been groomed, put into the pipeline to do what they are now doing.
Hillary accidentally gave away the game here. Because you hear all the usual stuff. Oh, he was scary. He's far right, and he's far right and scary because he's religious. This is different than John Roberts, who's not that religious, it seems. But Sam Alito, he's real religious, and that scared me because of his religion. Not yours or mine, interviewer, but his religion. What she's admitting here is that she doesn't have a problem with religion in politics per se, because Hillary Clinton also is a fairly intelligent person, and she knows you can't have politics without religion because politics involves applied morality, which comes from religion. Hillary's problem with Sam Alito, the liberals' problem with Sam Alito, is not religion. It's his religion. And what is his religion? He's a Catholic. That's what she doesn't like. This is the most naked anti-Catholic bigotry that I have seen in politics since Dianne Feinstein was grilling Amy Coney Barrett, who was up for a federal judge position. And she said, what worries me about you, Judge Barrett, is that, or at that time, I suppose, Professor Barrett, is the dogma lives loudly within you. It'd be one thing if you were just a kind of mildly religious, or I don't know, if you were Episcopalian or Methodist or something, but you believe in this Catholic dogma, and you really believe in it. It seems that, you have a lot of kids and you practice your faith, and you can't have that dogma live loudly within you. This is the Democrats undermining a basic provision of the Constitution, which is that there will not be a religious test for public office. There were some founding fathers who seemed open to religious tests for public office. John Jay writes about how he thought only Christians should hold public office. John Jay, who is one of the authors of The Federalist, who's defending the Constitution, nevertheless, he says, look, it's a Christian country. We should have Christian politicians. And he writes this in letters. Nevertheless, in the Constitution, we see no religious test. And of course, you need if we had a whole spate of politicians whose religion was the anti-American religion, the anti-Constitution religion, well, that would create a political problem because the Constitution would have allowed these people to come in to undermine the Constitution, to undermine the whole country. But that's what she's saying here. I don't like Sam Alito because he's a Catholic. We don't want their religion. That's what James Carville's saying. I don't like Mike Johnson because he's an evangelical. We don't like these Republicans because these Republicans are more openly Christian. They're speaking in moral terms, which for most of our history, going back to the founding of the party, going back to Abraham Lincoln using language straight out of the King James Bible, has typified the Republican Party. Ooh, we don't like this because when Republicans talk in this way, that's based on solid principles that comes from true religion that animates our country and that has animated our country through our country's growth, then they're a real threat. And we don't like that. We Democrats don't like that. There's so much more to get to. Speaking of religion, Cori Bush, the liberal Congress lady, has claimed that she's performed miracles and cured tumors through faith healing. We're going to have to wait for that, though. Because you know me, I'm a tease. And we got to get to the member room segmentum. This is Woke Wednesday. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLES at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.